So, top of the news in terms of the creative AI space, the film The Magnificent Ambersons, which came out in the fees, is going to be re-enhanced. A portion of it is going to be re-enhanced that was technically butchered by studio executives when it originally came out, produced and directed by Orson Welles originally. I'm curious about this one because Welles, when he put this film together, was not happy with the way the studio handled it. And now I'm curious to see how AI might bring it to life in the original vision he maybe wanted. Curious for your take on this.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's incredible that new technology of any sort can reinvigorate or help us reimagine this old material that's frankly nearly a century old at this point, right? But from one of the great masters of cinema, Orson Welles. And so I think it's, first of all, just fascinating, right? It was a reason it gets headlines because it's like, wow, what if we could reimagine this film and what it could have been, right? So I think
That's
that's
right.
fantastic. It also kind of reminds me of the Peter Jackson project from a couple of years back with the Beatles, Get Back,
Yep.
where that was actually an early form of AI powered machine learning that allowed them to separate the stems of the Beatles recordings so that you could actually reapproach a lot of that material in a fresh way that literally wouldn't have been possible even a year or two earlier. And so I look at it in the same way where, I think for all of the fear around what AI can be in terms of a replacement for human creativity and all these things, then you see an example like this and you're like, huh, okay, obviously there are going to be tons of human creatives involved
That's
in this
right.
process
That's right.
to interpret and make sense of what AI makes possible. So this almost becomes like a studio trick, right? Where it's like, okay, AI is now making possible this new interpretation of old footage. And so to me, I think the opportunity here is like, what else could we go back and revisit? Or what else has been on the cutting room floor? What wasn't finished properly or at all?
That's right.
And I think that's just sort of like a fascinating place to start, especially in an industry like the entertainment industry, where everyone complains about how everyone's just like regurgitating old storylines and plot lines. And it's like, okay, well, what if we could go back to even older stuff and think about it in a fresh way? So I think this example is just fascinating for so many reasons. The idea that a human maybe didn't do a good job on the original edit
Yeah.
now, 80 years later, whatever it is, a machine might just take over that job with the assistance of a whole lot of humans, or maybe flip that, humans with the assistance of the AI. But yeah, I love this example. And I guess the juries will remain out until we see how good a job it does, right? And that's, I think, the hallmark of what these discussions should be. We shouldn't celebrate that AI is on the scene. We should celebrate it once we see how miraculous the recovery is that AI helped enable, right? And that's where I think AI as a means to a worthwhile end is worth celebrating. The fact that AI is doing this is a good headline, but imagine if they actually make like a best picture nominee out
Yep.
of an 80-year-old film that was hated. You know what I mean? Like that's insane. Like what do you even do with that if you're the Academy, right? I mean, probably they'll love it because it's Orson Welles and everyone loves everything about Orson Welles. But
Yep.
what a weird thing, right? To be able to resubmit for consideration, essentially, an 80-year-old film with a fresh perspective attached to it. Like, what will they do if that happens, right? And furthermore, it's just as likely or possible, I don't know, depending on how optimistic you are or not, that maybe the stuff on the cutting room floor wasn't as good as Orson Welles said it was, and the editors didn't butcher it after all. It was just like maybe not his best work, right? So I'll be curious to see what happens, but I don't think it's like it's the beginning of the story, not the end.
Yeah, and they have parts of this film where when he was shooting it, there were people who got like in the way of the scene of some of the scenes that later he admitted he's like, this is garbage. Like I can't go back and reshoot this. I think they could actually redo some of those scenes, Alex, so that it actually lives to its maybe what he intended it to be. But anyone who's like, oh, I don't like where this is going. We get remakes all the time. I don't look at this as a remake. I look at this as a creative remix in some ways. This could open the door, I think, as you said, to some interesting aspects moving forward.
I mean, what you can do with your finger on a photo on your iPhone now was unimaginable at that time, right? So I mean, it's especially I hadn't heard that detail. That's fascinating, and if that's the nature of what the problem was, like, man, we got this guy walking through the back of that shop. Interesting, right? Because it's actually similar to the Beatles example too, where it's like you had all this cool, in progress, these recordings from the Abbey Road sessions, but they just couldn't do anything with them because they were just all mushed together. It was like just a room mic, right? But
Yeah.
to be able to pull them apart and then reimagine them, remix them, to use your favorite phrase, it made that possible. So now it's like, well, what if you had that scene and you could complete the story in the way that Orson Welles had envisioned all those years ago? I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I think I think it'll be exciting to see some of the things that are in some vaults that, need to be restored, that creative folks are going to say, let's use AI to restore that. And then other examples of, film disintegrates over time. So I could actually see some, studios and creative teams saying, hey, while we restore that, let's also remix parts of that. So we have the original version and then we have, remade versions before some of this film basically, isn't available. That's worse than I think remixing some of these, stories, is losing these stories altogether.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. So whether it's preserving gems of the past before the equipment degrades that they were created on, or whether it's finding some magic that was just left and forgotten, right? I mean, how many things, we know how much content is created every year. It only accelerates now, but it's always been overwhelming. So to be able to parse through that and find these gems that are worth rediscovery, I think is really a fantastic use case of AI, because then once we discover those things, then we can package it, then we can create it, then we can bring a fresh eye to it. But imagine the how labor intensive that would be to find any of that old stuff from a random crate somewhere at the MVM studio. Yeah, I mean, that's just insane.
Love it. More next week at the intersection of AI and creativity.